Really quickly, guys, before the video gets started, I just wanted to let you know, for those of you that don't know, that I do have a second channel called Gaming Logically, where I do some stuff with video games. Mostly at the moment, it is going to be NBA 2K20 stuff, obviously because the game just released. It'll be rebuilds, my team stuff, my player stuff, as well as I will be streaming on Twitch under the same name, Gaming Logically, and I will be putting up some stream highlights there and making some videos there as well. Same thing, my team rebuild, stuff like that. I've been doing this every single day since the game released, and some of you guys have even showed up, and I really appreciate that. Just want to let you know about that really quickly before the video gets started. Welcome back, everybody. My name is Tucker, and today's video is a continuation of my season preview series for the 2019-20 NBA season, and this one is covering the Toronto Raptors. Now, obviously, the Raptors had a great season last year. NBA champions, they won the title. Congrats to them. It was a huge accomplishment for them. Even with all the injuries that the Warriors suffered in the finals, it's still an incredible accomplishment at any point to win an NBA title, and a huge congratulations to them. But for obvious reasons, things are going to be pretty different this upcoming season for this team. Even with the departure of Kawhi Leonard in free agency, it's clear that not only was that the correct move and a great move by the franchise to trade for him initially because they won the title, obviously, but also that they do still have a bright future despite his departure. Now, obviously, that future isn't as bright as it would have been if Kawhi had re-signed with the team, but relatively speaking, compared to where they were even a few seasons ago, this is still a good future for this Raptors team, and all is not lost, certainly, even though they lost one of the best players in the league in Kawhi in free agents. So let's talk about their offseason. Unfortunately, this team did not have a first-round pick as a result of trading their own to the San Antonio Spurs in that Kawhi Leonard trade, so there's nothing to talk about here in terms of rookies, at least in terms of first-round guys. There are some other players, but I'm not going to spend time talking about them here. The only other two players in terms of additions are Stanley Johnson and Rondae Hollis-Jefferson. Both of them are in a similar role, except Hollis-Jefferson would play up at the 4 a little bit more than Johnson would. They're both kind of wings, combo players that can play really good defense, are really physical, are good athletes, but offensively they definitely struggle. Hollis-Jefferson specifically really struggles as a shooter and cannot finish at the rim especially well. I know this as a Nets fan, having watched him since he got drafted. That's definitely a struggle for him. Now, there's potential there and he can certainly improve, and I would bet on him succeeding with this Raptors team more so than I would Stanley Johnson, but there are definitely issues there. Johnson was really impressive as a rookie, as I believe the 8th overall pick initially with Detroit, came out with just this really fearless attitude and had a pretty good rookie season, but the offense just never really developed, and teams just kind of figured it out in terms of his just over-aggressive physicality defensively, and that has caused him some issues. That's not to say that there aren't still some promising signs with these two players potentially being something for this Raptors team, and I like the fact that they're at least buying low, taking flyers on guys that could be good for them, but right now, nothing to be too excited here for the Raptors in terms of additions this offseason. In terms of subtractions, there are some minor ones like Jeremy Lin and CJ Miles, but most importantly, obviously, it's Kawhi Leonard. Then also Danny Green is a really important subtraction for this team. These are two guys that were extremely important for obvious reasons to the success of this team last year and to them winning the NBA title. Green ended up going to the Lakers, Kawhi ended up going to the Clippers, as everybody knows. Those are going to be big subtractions, but they're not going to be world-changing for this or world-ending for this team, at least, because like I said, they do still have a bright future, but you can't get away from the fact that the finals MVP and then one of their better rotation players left their team this offseason. And now we get to the depth chart, and this is where you can see things getting a little bit more fluid for this team. Personally, I'm going to go with Lowry, Van Vliet, OG, Siakam, and then Gasol, and then you can see the other guys coming off of the bench. Van Vliet is really kind of the one that you can interchange there because you could put him at the backup point guard spot, have him come in for Lowry and be a playmaker when Lowry comes off the bench. But personally, I think the best backcourt that this team can put on the floor is Van Vliet and Lowry together, despite the fact that neither of them bring great size, but you can certainly get around that, like I said, by bringing Van Vliet off the bench and bringing in someone like Powell and McCall to start at the 2 spot. The other interesting thing here is OG Anunoby. He is going to be someone that I'm going to talk about more extensively later, but is a really important piece for this team. Should continue to be a good defender, but has strides to make offensively. And then the real strength, I think, of this team this upcoming season is the front court. Those 3 guys, Siakam, Ibaka, and Gasol, are going to be critically important to this team's success, specifically Siakam, obviously reigning most improved player, someone that should be an all-star this upcoming season. But those are 3 guys that just work well together. They all can shoot. They all can do various things offensively. They're all at least steady defenders and are in the right positions, defensively. And I just really like that group. And like I said, I think that is their strength because backcourt-wise and really perimeter-wise, it's basically just Van Vliet and Lowry, unfortunately. Now, like I spoke about briefly a little bit earlier, versatility is important for this team. They have Hollis-Jefferson, they have Stanley Johnson. Those guys can slide down and play at the 4 spot in smaller lineups. You could even mess around and put Hollis-Jefferson at the 5 if you really wanted to. But I think that's important to have guys that can play either the 3 or the 4. And I think that's one of the reasons that they brought in Johnson and Hollis-Jefferson, because one of the more effective lineups for this team, at least in my opinion, that they should utilize this upcoming season is putting Pascal Siakam at the 5, depending on the matchup. Obviously, Gasol and Ibaka are going to get plenty of minutes, but just in spurts, putting Siakam at the 5 potentially even in a playoff series, and having a couple of extra wings like Hollis Jefferson and like Stanley Johnson to play either the 3 or the 4 spot in those lineups is really important. However, that's going to cause some issues spacing wise, and that would be another issue that I foresee for this team. They've got pretty good spacing in the front court with those 3 guys that I talked about, but on the wings and at the 2 spot, it could be an issue unless Lowry and Van Fleet are playing at the same time. So in the end, pretty much everything about the present and the future of this team revolves around Pascal Siakam and to a much lesser extent OG Anunoby as their 2 legitimate young assets outside of Van Fleet, who's an upcoming free agent. And the loss of Kawhi this offseason has never made the value of those players more important to the Raptors than it is right. Moving on now to players to watch, and just like the Miami Heat preview that I believe is out by now, this is a team that definitely you should look out for potentially on the trade market. They have a ton of expiring contracts and big ones as well that would allow them to take on a ton of salary for assets if they felt like, potentially a big store if that was something that became available and they're on a big contract. Maybe a team is looking to dump them. They have picks, they have younger assets, they have plenty of expiring contracts. I would expect Pascal Siakam to be off limits in any of those talks, but in terms of the expiring contract part and the picks part, the Raptors definitely have that. So keep an eye on this team. Even someone like Kyle Lowry, depending on how their season's going, that's a big expiring. Marc Gasol, Serge Ibaka, all these guys are going to potentially be up for trades because I think after this year, it's like they have Siakam that's going to be coming up for a new deal. They've got OG that's going to be coming up for a new deal eventually, and then it's Norman Powell, who's the only like long-term contract guy on the roster in terms of a big number, and pretty much everybody else is an expiring contract. So keep an eye on these guys, just like I said in the Heat preview. Now, in terms of a player to watch, keep an eye on OG Anunoby. I've talked about him a couple of times on this video. I told you I was going to come back to him. He's someone that had a good rookie year and in certain ways took a step back last year. Is someone that's always going to be a good defender and almost always going to be a strictly off-ball offensive player, but his efficiency as an off-ball offensive player did dip last year. He struggled with injury issues a little bit, missing 15 games, and he's just someone that really for this team to be good and to be a potential conference champion contender within the next 2 to 3 seasons, OG Anunoby is going to be relatively critical to that potentially happening. If he can get back to being a really good defender, attacking off closeouts, being efficient in his 3-point shooting as well as his field goal percentage, his free throw percentage, getting to the line more, all those things, that's going to be huge for this team. But he did take a step backwards last year, like I said, in terms of basically everything but points per game. Some of his per game averages were up, but in terms of efficiency and just his overall game, it's definitely concerning how his season went a year ago. However, if he can put together a fully healthy season and show promise for this team, that's going to be a big deal for them. And if he doesn't, he might not end up getting a second contract from Toronto. So really big year for OG Anunoby. Keep an eye on him. Moving on now to expectations, it's pretty obvious to me at least. This is the defending NBA champions. Despite the fact that they lost Kawhi Leonard, I definitely think that they are a playoff contender this upcoming season. In terms of my own prediction, I've got them at 42 to 44 wins and making the playoffs somewhere in that back 3 in the Eastern Conference, in my opinion. I don't think they're going to slide back so much that they're going to be out of the playoffs. This is still a team with a ton of confidence. They've still got Kyle Lowry, they've still got Siakam, they still got Van Fleet, they've still got OG, they still got Gasol and Ibaka. Basically, all the pieces of their championship team last year are still there with the exception of Kawhi and Danny Green. Those are obviously gigantic losses. Shooting could be an issue. Floor spacing could be an issue. Really, the only way I see them potentially missing the playoffs is because of injuries and then them just selling off players. So, for example, like if Siakam misses a month or a month and a half and they're 10 games under 500 going into the All-Star break, guys like Kyle Lowry, Marc Gasol, Serge Ibaka, those are going to be players they're probably going to look at trading, and then they could just slide further out simply because their team wouldn't be as good at that point. That's obviously a risk for basically any team across the league, but injuries could definitely derail this team's season. But just on paper, looking at their roster, I've got them in like the 6, 7, or 8 range in the Eastern Conference playoffs and about 42 to 44 wins, like I said, with all-star consideration and probably an all-star spot for Pascal Siakam this upcoming season, the reigning most improved player. And normally this is where I end the video, but just keep an eye on this team moving into next offseason. Like I said, they have all these expiring contracts. This is going to be a really interesting team. Depending on how their season goes, they could be really big free agent players next offseason and the following. They bring back Pascal Siakam, and they're still going to have a ton of money because they've got Lowry coming off the books, Gasol coming off the books, Ibaka coming off the books. And if a player is really interested in going to Toronto as a free agent, and I think they're kind of a trendy team right now, then they could definitely make some noise in free agency, whether it's a big player or a couple of middling players, either way. And then they have the option to either bring back some of their current players or let them walk to create that cap space. Either way, just keep an eye on them. I think they're one of the more interesting teams of probably the next 5 or so years, coming off of an unprecedented season, not only winning the title by trading for, you know, one of the best players in the league, but then also losing that player the following offseason in free agency. And yeah, there you have it. That is going to be the end of today's video covering the upcoming season for the Toronto Raptors. If you missed any of my other season previews, I've done, you know, somewhere around 7 or 8 at this point have been released. Be sure to check those out. I'm really enjoying doing these. I'm going to continue to crank them out. Like I say, every video, I'm going to do all 30 teams. Trust me. But like I said, my name is Tucker. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and I will see you all next time.